Hi, my name is Lindy Jung. I am a science fiction and fantasy writer. As you can probably tell by the new background arrangement, which I'm still figuring out, I have moved again for the third time this year. I did move for the summer term of my master's program, so very exciting stuff. However, my classes have not started yet. I figured moths is done. Now seems like as good a time as any to start working on my next book. So yeah, this is not the video I thought I was going to film today, but it is the video we're filming. Welcome to episode 1 of the Project Crypts writing vlog. To clarify, Crypts is C-R-Y-P-T-S. and not anything else. Let's just start with like a general update and then go into what the project is about, what it's looking like, and then what I'm gonna do today. And for the next couple days, because this will be a few days of just like getting started, I think I'll stop filming once the outline is pretty much done and the world building is set, so it might be like sporadic updates rather than a steady one. General writing updates, moths is done. I am officially taking my hands off it for now. That's pretty much all I can say. I'm super relieved to be finished with it, but also very, very excited to work on something new. I have been itching to work on something new for such a long time. It's not that I felt stuck with that project, but I feel like I've been working on it for kind of a ridiculous number of years at this point. So I'm really excited to work on something new, and this is going to be that something new. There's always a chance, and this very much depends on like my creative flow and how things are going with this project. There's a chance that I stop working on this at some point, and that has happened a couple times on this channel before. It happens a lot in my day-to-day life where I start a project and realize I'm not ready for it, or it's not what I thought it was going to be, and then I stop working on it and work on something else. And it's a really frustrating part of my process, and I want to try super hard not to do that with this project because I do think it has a super interesting premise. I am about to dive into like a research deep dive right here. The more I research of this time period, which is like the Renaissance, the more interesting things I turn up, especially about the politics. So I feel like this is a rich enough premise to give me everything I need for a book. And that's another thing that I've learned. Another little tidbit of like writing life advice is that not every idea, no matter how good, how hooky, is like dense enough to carry a full-length novel. But this definitely feels like a novel, or honestly, if I am being fully honest with myself, a duology. I have been calling it a gothic romantasy. I'm not so sure about that right now because I'm having some mixed feelings about romance. But let's talk about the project. Let's talk about Project Crypts. In short, like the pitch is that it's about feuding necromancer guilds in a world inspired by Renaissance times. That's pretty much all I feel comfortable saying about it right now, just because so much is like not set in stone or developed, but I think it'll follow 2 points of view. I think it'll go pretty deep into the politics of this world that I'm slowly developing, and I have a really cool magic system. It's kind of like witchy almost, but it is very gothic. There's like a haunted element to everything. I love writing about ghosts. I'm obsessed with ghosts as symbolism. Generally speaking, I do feel like all of us are haunted by something, and that is a key element of character writing, is figuring out what burdens them in their past as well as what has like shaped them into who they are. So I like using ghosts to represent that, and also serve as a metaphor for things like secrets, guilt, serve as a means of sort of like unbearing the past that people are trying to keep hidden, because secrets like that don't stay hidden for long. So it's a lot of that kind of approach to ghosts, very metaphorical, versus like spooky, scary skeletons. Because this is sort of very gothic inspired, a lot of the symbolism and the story and the characters hinge on things that go unsaid. One of the key inspirations for this story is definitely like Crimson Peak, so it does have a haunted house element, but I wanted to expand beyond the scope of that and, like I said, like dive into the politics of this world. So there's kind of a lot of things to juggle here, and I think one of the most difficult aspects of writing this book will definitely be like balancing everything. So I'm very much prioritizing a very solid outline and very solid world building before I even start writing a single word. One of the issues that I had with moths, and one of the reasons it was such a painful like book birthing process, was because it is a very like dense, entangled story. There aren't a lot of characters, but their relationships are really complex, and there's a lot going on with the world building, and I feel like because a lot of that came to me later in the drafting process, it was such a pain in the butt to revise it and to get everything to the complexity and also like coherency that I wanted it to be. So I very much want this book to not be that same process. I'm gonna do all of my due diligence in order to make sure that it is not like that I don't have to endlessly rewrite and revise to untangle the threads I've made for myself. So yeah, gonna be a little bit more of an extensive outlining and planning and research process. And that's basically what I'm going into today. For today, we are going to grab my laptop. Once it charges a little bit more, I'm gonna have breakfast while it does that. It's around 10 a.m. so I think I'm going to head out to one of the libraries on campus because I live right up against campus right now. I'm gonna go to one of the libraries and park myself there and just kind of do like flat research until roughly lunchtime. Then I'll have a little treat and then come back, work on the outline a little bit. In terms of where this is at so far, I was kind of working on it as I was working on moths. So I do have like a synopsis of the basic plot, but I think the plot is going to get more complex. Right now the synopsis very much focuses on the romance plot points, and I wanted to do less of that. I feel like my heroine could be a little bit more active, especially in terms of the politics. The other point of view is, I guess, probably going to be her love interest, like 99%, and for him, he's very embedded in the politics of this world, and it's going to be his main focus, but also it's going to be like a lot of pining and yearning and like, oh, I don't know what to do with all of my repressed feelings. So a lot of that good stuff. There is one classical book that very much is going to serve as a point of influence for this story. One of the characters is named after the book, basically, and I think I need to reread that. I read it ages ago. Time to reread it. Otherwise, today's gonna be pretty chill. Like, mostly research, mostly tinkering with my outline, trying to figure out how to beef up this plot, make it a full, not epic, but like a sprawling fantasy, like a large-scale fantasy. I'll also be checking out some cafes and different restaurants and stuff throughout this week, and I hope you guys are excited because I'm very excited for this, actually. Welcome to episode 1, and I'll catch up with you guys in a little bit. Bye. Hi, it's currently 2 p.m. So I spent like a good, I want to say like an hour and a half outside. I was at the little like center that I found with the greenery inside, which is really cool. I'm definitely going back there. It's only like a block down from me too. And they have a little cafe that I didn't check out this time, but I probably will next time. I'm actually planning on doing a little video that's like exploring all the writing spots in my new city. So I might include that spot in that. Research is going well. I'm reading the classic book that the story is going to take a lot of cues from, not necessarily inspiration, but more like reference a lot. What I really spent a lot of time on was actually developing the religion that I'm going to be using in this story, because I'm really interested in like the political aspect of a religious body. Like, how does a religious organization wield political power and misuse it? So I'm very interested in including a through line of that, but I didn't want it to be a direct like one-to-one of any existing religion, so I'm kind of like building one from scratch, and it takes cues from a couple of different faiths that I'm vaguely familiar with, but it's hard to build a religion from scratch. I think the main thing that I'm running into is actually like the believability. Like, this is a religion that people have to be willing to lay down their lives for. Like, the average Joe is willing to lay down their life for this religion, right? And they fully subscribe to it. But it's so niche and esoteric and specific that I'm kind of having a hard time buying into that. Like, how would this particular doctrine spread when it's so like specific and odd? I want to make it have a little bit more of like mass appeal, if that makes sense. So that's definitely something I'll look into. Otherwise, I feel like the religion has like pretty solid feet right now. It's definitely, in terms of the spiritual side of it, it definitely does a lot of the things that I want it to do. And I feel like I've made something relatively unique, and really the only fact that is still kind of standing in the way of it being complete is the believability. After that, I'm going to switch to the politics. I kind of have a general sense like there's going to be broken up little states and then kind of a bigger threat sort of looming in the distance. It's typical fantasy stuff, but I want to get more into the specifics of how government is structured and its relationship with this religious order. So there's a lot to consider. And then after that, I'm going to go into the magic system, which is very tied into that religious order that I mentioned. So I feel like a lot of the groundwork is there, but I just want to build up the specifics of how it actually works when you do it. And then characters and their arcs and the plot as a whole, so like the actual story. Like I mentioned, I do have like a full synopsis written out, and I do have a pretty detailed outline, but again, I want to add more to it. I want it to be more expansive and more like tense and detailed and everything. I want all the politics to come into play, and I want that other point of view to come into it as well. So it's kind of an incomplete outline. There's a lot of groundwork to be laid. And what I'm running into now is that I don't want to like plan anymore. I just kind of want to write it. I always get to this. I get so impatient to start drafting. And then I hit so many roadblocks and I mess up, or not mess up, but just the story is too messy because I didn't plan it enough. So I'm really trying to kind of push myself to keep on this outlining and planning mode right now. But I think I'll give myself until roughly the end of next week. So that's probably around the time that this vlog will end. I'll do a little bit more planning today. I'll give you guys an update once I start moving into the process of like the world building, the rest of the world building outside of the religion and the government and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of like a not boring for me, but boring for you guys to watch, because it's me just like staring at my laptop and occasionally jotting down notes. And I just don't really want to share too many specifics, especially at this stage. So it's not like I can talk you guys through every step of my thought process, but I'll try to share as much as I can. And I hope this breakdown makes sense to you guys. If you're interested in my fantasy world building process, I've been able to make that process a lot more linear and organized because I did a 5-part series on fantasy world building that was sectioned into these different things. So I'm very much basing my areas of concentration off of the sections that I mentioned in those videos. And that's pretty much it. I'm gonna make myself a really quick lunch because I'm starving. I'm so hungry. I feel like my brain honestly hasn't fully recovered from like editing moths that last time, so I'm taking things a little bit slow, at least for the rest of this week, and I have a fun weekend planned, so you're gonna see clips of that maybe. And then next week it'll be back onto the grind. See you in a bit. Bye. Here's the setup for today. It's currently Sunday, June 9th. Before I get into any of the stuff we're going to do today, I wanted to take a really quick moment to shout out the company that sent me some products today. So Merit Beauty is a company that I've worked with before. Merit Beauty is a clean beauty brand. Their focus is minimalist, skin-healthy makeup products. They have recently sent me something that I was so excited to try. It's actually their best-selling Flush Balm shade in Beverly Hills. It's a beautiful, sort of like muted peachy / dusty rose shade. It's got a creamy sort of melting balm formula. I'll put on a little more because why not? And I just kind of dab it out with my fingers and it just blends in right away. It just looks like a very natural flush. So they sent me their Flush Balm, but Merit also recently launched a companion to the shade because it was so popular, and that is their signature lip in Ginger. This is brand new. I'm also wearing this on my lips already, but as you can see, it's a light, sheer, peachy shade. Merit's formula is super hydrating both on the lips and the skin. They're sustainable, they have a short ingredient list, so none of those nasty chemicals clogging up their formulas, and they perform great, so highly, highly recommend. I do have a link to these products below, and if you buy Merit products through my link, then I get a little bit of commission at no extra cost to you. If you're into sustainable and clean beauty, so if you're like a skincare girly, then I highly just recommend checking out what they have to offer. I genuinely just love their products and love their brand and their mission, and I hope to work with them again. So with that being said, where am I with the outlining process for this project? So I've done a fair amount of research, I've brainstormed a lot. There's a couple of elements that I kind of just like want to figure out a little bit more. For example, the main character, I feel like she's kind of boring. She has like a tragic backstory, but it's a little bit generic. It doesn't feed into her personality the way I want it to. And I kind of don't know who she is as a person or what her personality is. She is so central to this story, and I don't want this to feel like one of those stories where the female main character is just kind of getting into messes. I want her to be a driving force. I want her growth arc to be like so central to everything and so compelling, and I just need to figure out where she starts off. So I have a couple of ideas for that. I'm going to brainstorm those and try to slot them into the plot that I have so far and see how that works. I'm also streaming tonight at 7 p.m. so that's in about like 5 hours. But right now I'm just gonna take some time to myself before that and start brainstorming a little bit more. While I was thinking about things, I also made this mood board for the project. I feel like it's a little bit of a generic gothic mood board. Like, you can't glean a ton of information from this, but it is very important for me to early on sort of establish the visual vibe in a concrete way with a mood board or something similar, because I can't picture things in my brain, so I have to picture them outside of my brain. Once I finish the outline and fix the synopsis, writing a synopsis is part of my process. I try to write a synopsis before I write any book, and it's very helpful. I'm going to have someone look over those things and then give me feedback. And once I get feedback on that, I will share that with you guys and fix up the outline a little bit, and then we'll be done with the video because the outline will be done. I'm actually getting really impatient to draft this book because I just want to be drafting. I want to be writing. So I guess what I'm saying is that I have no choice but to finish this outline as quickly as possible. I'll do a little update right before the stream, film a little bit of the stream, and then do kind of a wrap up. That is all, so I'll talk to you guys in a little bit. Bye. Live. Hi, welcome back to my third official stream. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat, say hello. So it's currently almost 9:30. I just did like over a 2-hour stream, almost 2.5 hours. It was a really good stream. It had a really good turnout and a lot of engagement, which is all that I ever want from streams, is to be able to interact with people consistently throughout. But I also was able to get some of my own stuff done. Figured out the religion. I figured out most of the macro politics, so that's the politics involving the countries outside of the country where this story takes place. And I've decided to go back on the dual POV thing. I'm not going to do that anymore because I was looking at the outline and I feel like most of the political stuff that happens can still happen from that one character's point of view. If I start writing it and it feels incomplete and it feels like I genuinely can't pull off those elements without the other point of view, then I will backtrack on this once again, but right now I just don't really feel a need for it. I feel really good about this story. I think right now a lot of it is going to be organizing my existing thoughts, my existing notes. The folder for this, which is like literally just in the notes app. I do almost all of my brainstorming in the notes app. I have to organize it after the fact, which is super annoying and super tedious, and sometimes I skip that step and then I forget about certain elements that I came up with until like 3 revisions down the line, and it's just a mess. But I feel really good about this story. Very excited to start drafting for sure. I feel like it's going to have a lot going on in the background in terms of the politics and the religion and everything that's sort of like going on in the grand scope of the world. That is going to be very secondary to this main character's arc. So I'm kind of pivoting focus now that I have more of a baseline for the world back onto that main character, and I'm trying to figure out the things about her that will make her compelling and interesting and make her arc and her story matter. And I think I've come up with a couple of traits that make her more lively basically as a character and more interesting to read and make her journey more effective. For me, I always kind of like to start low. Either a character starts out at a really high point in their life and then has a rapid decline, or they have a rapid incline. There just has to be some sort of dramatic shift in their state or their life for me. Like, their arc has to be quite a steep one. Like, for me, I always like to write a character with a rather steep arc. And this is definitely a character with a steep arc, but there's just a couple things that I want to figure out still. So I will update you guys later once I have that figured out. For now, I'm going to get ready for bed. But I love the streams, and I will be doing another one in just a couple weeks, so very excited to do that again. All right, I will catch you guys soon. Bye. Hi, it's June 14th, so another little update for you. This will probably be the last day because I'm about to wrap up work on the chapter by chapter outline, which will be the last stage of my outlining process before I dive into the draft. And then once I start drafting, we'll do another little video about that. This week has been kind of hectic just in terms of like the other non-writing work I've had to do. Definitely like more school stuff is happening. We haven't had our first official day of classes yet, and I already feel like I'm behind on the homework somehow, so I definitely have to get on that. I've also just kind of been in a little bit of a funk. I feel like it's a little bit lonely, like I haven't found, people to hang out with and do stuff with yet. And I don't mind doing stuff on my own, but there's some things where, life is spiced up by the presence of other people. So that's, just a little bit of a feeling kind of like I haven't found my folks yet that I'm gonna be hanging out with and doing stuff. Like I haven't found my group for the writing, other than just the sad times of right now. For the actual writing, I finished a synopsis. So this is basically like the first draft of what would potentially be the synopsis that I pitched this book with. I really like writing synopses. I remember one of my former agents would call me like a unicorn because I can just like get them done really quickly and do them pretty well, in my opinion, like as well as you can write a synopsis. I like to incorporate writing a synopsis into the early stages of my writing. Saves time later on because I feel like it's a little bit harder to write a synopsis based off a finished book versus write a synopsis based off the idea in your head that you can just tweak later as the book changes. So I usually write a synopsis basically, and this is almost like a proto outline, but it's also helpful because a synopsis is written in a non-pretty way. It is still kind of like telling the story. It's still storytelling because you are relaying the plot and the arcs and all that in a very straightforward written manner versus an outline which is just bullet points. So with a synopsis, I tend to be able to see the flow of consequences, the flow of events a little bit better. So I like a synopsis basically for this stage of writing. The synopsis is done. I also use the synopsis to kind of like pitch my ideas. I don't even want to call them my alpha readers, but people who can look over it and kind of tell me like, here are what elements are working for me, here's what I think is missing, etc., etc. So I did that. I had some people look over my synopsis, and I'm actually going to go over their notes right now and kind of like share that with you. Hold on one second. So I want to go over those notes, kind of talk about what some of the major things I need to address are going to be, and then how I'm going to address those. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish that chapter by chapter outline, which is kind of in chunks right now. For my chapter by chapter outline, I think I have like the first act or so outline now. Obviously, I know how the book is going to progress. Like I know the beginning, middle, and end of the story, but now we're going to focus on what the chapters actually contain and how those macro level plot points are going to play out. So with a chapter by chapter outline, my focus is to make sure that at least one major scene happens every chapter or so. Obviously, some scenes are meatier, so they might take up multiple chapters, especially if they're major plot points. But for the most part, you want every chapter to contain some sort of central scene, and you want some status quo change with each scene. And I'm also going to be thinking about the 3 C's, so that is context, choice, and consequence for each of these scenes as well. I have a video about that you can check out. It is one of my favorite craft videos that I've made, not to toot my own horn. I just really like that video, and I feel like that's a concept that was so helpful for me when I thought it up that I just use it all the time now. This is going to be the tricky part of outlining, so I anticipate it taking at least like all day. I have a couple hours here before I have to do stuff that I just want to like prioritize getting a rough chapter by chapter outline done. Because I wrote the synopsis, I hope that makes it a little bit easier. It might not. But the other thing about the chapter by chapter outline is that while I want to be as detailed as I can be while coming up with it, and while I want to consider all the 3 C's and character arcs and theme and everything that's going on, I'm not going to follow this by the letter when I sit down and draft, even though I am pushing myself to do this really detailed outline, and it's just not going to go that way, and I know that. So I'm trying not to like be too much of a perfectionist with this stage because I know that's just gonna get me stuck, that I'm not gonna ever start actually drafting. Part of the beauty of this first draft is that I get to explore and I get to play around and discover. Also, the other issue is that drafting pacing is very, very different from outlining pacing. So as I draft, I'm gonna just give myself the space for those new ideas, for the pacing to have to like automatically adjust itself based on how it actually is turning out within the scenes and the chapters. In other words, we're not gonna be too hypercritical on ourselves, or I'm not going to be too hypercritical on myself with this chapter by chapter outline, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it. We're going to take a look first and see what people had to say about the synopsis. I had a call with one of the people who read it last night, so I kind of have an idea of what I'm about to get into here, but I have not looked at any of these comments yet. All right, so let's get right into it. I'm just switching it up really quickly, switching up the angle, and I'm just gonna like, I don't know, you can't really see anything of what I'm doing. I am just gonna dive right into that doc. Oh my god, there's so many comments. One of the things that I've gotten is that people really like the premise. I feel like I've gotten this reaction from like y'all as well. The vibes are very much there. My problem is always gonna be execution. That's everyone's problem. Okay, so this is someone, oh yeah, this is just my partner who I was talking to yesterday about the synopsis, just putting in the notes we had during our discussion. It was like a 2-hour phone call just talking about this, and I think that's kind of funny. One of the like symbol slash kind of mysterious figures in this story is a crow, which rightfully you pointed out was like too similar to Game of Thrones, so I'm gonna change what animal that is very slightly. All right, so there is elements of the magic system that I would like to figure out, and people are questioning me on it because they caught me. I got caught. That's fine. I think I've got it. That's pretty much all the notes. It's everything that we talked about in our call, so there's not really anything that's blindsiding me. Yeah, there's like no notes on the back half, which frightens me. I feel like we were talking a lot about the ending, especially getting really convoluted with the politics. I'm partial to that, and that's kind of the goal here, is to have something that's really like complicated, like tangled politics, all of these different players, and then it kind of ruining everyone's life. I don't know, I'll have to think about it. Let's see how the outline goes, the chapter by chapter outline, because that'll be more detailed, so hopefully it'll just give me a better idea of what's going to happen. I'm hoping it's not one of those things where I write the entire book and then I have to scrap the ending and do it again. All right, so that's pretty much it. Pretty light notes so far. I mean, only 2 people looked over it. I feel like I'm in a good place to start outlining. Like, I do have a lot of things to consider. I think it'll be okay. So let's go ahead and start that. There is no pretty or nice way to put this, but I am literally just damp because it is so humid out. My hair is doing this. It's not even that hot. It's not raining. It rained yesterday quite a bit, as you saw in that last clip, but it's just humid and it makes everything wet. What is that? Hi, welcome back. It is Thursday, June 20th, and a lot has happened in this past week. Actually, so much has happened, but I finally finished that outline, the last dregs of it, in class today. Because I started my master's program this week and I greatly underestimated how much work I would have to do in this first week, I just kind of like fell behind and had to rush and get it done. So it is done now. I do have a complete chapter by chapter outline. It's shorter than I expected, and it also maybe covers less ground than I would like it to, but I feel like at this point I've just been so consistently stuck on character arcs and plot points, in the sense that I kind of know where everything is going, broadly speaking, but to figure out the details, I'm really just gonna have to like get into it and write it. I guess in the planning outlining stage, I'm finding out I can't really picture the story as a whole. I have to like be actually writing it, if that makes sense. So that is, I guess, it for the outline. It was an interesting process for me. I think this is the first time I've really like sat down and challenged myself to think through as many points as possible. And it's also definitely the first time I've like presented a synopsis, or, you know, something along those lines, a rough synopsis of the plot to a third party, and had them give me feedback on just the story itself, like based on those bare bones. And I liked that. Also, the person I presented it to has a very different way of approaching and thinking about story and different story sensibilities than I do. So even though it's like kind of frustrating to have to argue those points or be like, well, I don't really necessarily need to explain every detail of the magic because that's just not this type of book, it does force me to think outside the box a little bit more, and I've always worked a little bit better when I had to bounce my ideas off someone and things like that. So I like that. I'm definitely gonna keep doing that. But at the end of the day, I'm just not ever gonna be like a full-on pantser. I'm always gonna be a little bit of a plantser. So this is the best I can do in terms of the outline. It has my very typical pattern of a very well-developed first 2 acts or act and a half, and then the back half of the book kind of feels a little mushier and not quite so defined. So that'll be fun when I get to that point in the drafting stage. But honestly, I'm hoping the details kind of resolve themselves as drafting continues. So the next time I see you with this project, I will be showing you guys the first couple little days or weeks maybe of drafting, I'm thinking I'll do a video on just like the prologue and the first chapter, and then we'll kind of go from there. So I just wanted to mention two things really quickly. One is that I do have a live writing stream happening tomorrow, as in if you're watching this the day that it comes up, Saturday, June 22nd. The stream is at 6 p.m. CDT, Sunday, June 20. So if you're able to make that, please come along. We do sprints, we chat, we answer questions, we troubleshoot. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy hosting those. The other thing is that I am starting to pull together a video in which I edit viewers' first chapters. I've made a Google form in case you're interested. Just to let you know, people who are selected, I'll select 3 people to do the video. I'll select 3 people to do the video edits with. You guys will have your words displayed on the screen. Not all of them, I'll probably only focus on sections where I have like the most feedback or the most helpful or macro level feedback. Your writing will be shown on screen and I will read it out loud. So if that terrifies you, then maybe don't do it, or maybe do it to push yourself. I don't really know, but either way, the form is in the description box below if you want to check that out. So stream on Sunday and form is open until Monday, and that is June 24th. So that is pretty much it. So glad that this video is done. I feel like I've been filming this for like a month. It probably has been much less than that, but it just feels like it's been such a long time since I started. But that's it for today, and thank you for coming along on this outlining journey. So many people were so supportive about Project Moths that I can only hope to get like half of that reception with this new project, Project Crypts. Either way, thank you for watching this and for your interest, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.